My fiancé left me for his high school ex who realized what she lost when we got engaged. Now he's outside my apartment claiming she's pregnant with someone else's baby. 3 years together. One wedding dress hanging in my closet. 0 warning signs until she emailed him. My high school ex wants to catch up, Mark said, showing me her message. We dated 7 years before she left for grad school abroad. Haven't talked in 5 years. The email was friendly, professional. Just curious about his life. I said yes, go meet her. I trusted him completely. He came back different. For 3 weeks he was on his phone constantly. Picked fights about nothing. Couldn't look me in the eyes during sex. When I tried to hug him after work, something I'd done every day for 3 years, he actually flinched. What's wrong? I asked. Just stressed about work. Saturday, I went to knit with his grandmother. My weekly tradition since she'd basically adopted me after mine died. When I came home, Mark was packing. I'm sorry, he said, not looking at me. But when life gives you a second chance, you have to take it. What are you talking about? Seeing Yana again, I realized what I lost. What we had was real. What you and I have is comfortable. But it's not the same. I stood there holding the scarf I'd been knitting for him while he explained how his ex wanted him back. How she'd realized what she'd lost when she heard he was engaged. How they'd been talking every day since that coffee. How he was moving in with her tonight. You're leaving me for someone you've known 3 weeks after 3 years together? I've known her since I was 15. You can't compete with history like that. He left me crying in our apartment. Said he'd keep paying his half of the rent until the lease was up. His friend waited outside with a truck. Couldn't even look at me as they loaded boxes. I spent 2 weeks in hell. Couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep in our bed. His grandmother called me daily, calling him a fool, saying he'd regret it. His mother texted apologies, devastated about the wedding that wouldn't happen. Even his sister reached out, said Jonna had always been manipulative, that she'd probably leave him again once the thrill wore off. Then yesterday, 3 weeks after he left, Mark called. I made a mistake, he said, voice breaking. The biggest mistake of my life. Are you drunk? No, I'm clear-headed for the first time in weeks. Jonna. She's not who I remembered. We're strangers pretending to know each other. She keeps talking about her life abroad, the men she dated, how provincial our town feels now. She made fun of my job, called it cute, that I'm still doing the same thing. She threw out all my stuff because it didn't match her aesthetic. And I miss you. I miss us. I miss coming home to someone who actually knows me, not some idealized memory from high school. You left me for a memory. I know. God, I know. Can we talk? In person? No. Please. I'll explain everything. Jonna's already talking about moving to London for her career. She never intended to stay. She just didn't want me marrying someone else. I laughed. Actually laughed. So she won you back just to prove she could? I think, yeah. She keeps asking about you, comparing herself to you. It was never about wanting me. It was about beating you. And you fell for it. I'm in love with you. I've always been in love with you. I just got confused. You weren't confused when you packed your things. You weren't confused when you said she was your second chance. I'm outside. My blood went cold. What? I'm outside the apartment. Our apartment. Please, just 5 minutes. I looked out the window. His car was there, him standing beside it in the rain like some romance movie scene. But this wasn't a movie. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. I still have a key. My name's still on the lease. You wouldn't. I need you to understand. Jonna's pregnant. The words hit like ice water. What? But here's the thing. I don't think it's mine. The timing doesn't add up unless she was already pregnant when she contacted me. I hung up. He's still outside. Still calling. Still texting. His latest message. She targeted me. She knew about our engagement from social media. I have proof. I haven't responded. But I can see him from my window, and he's not leaving. I stand at the window watching him through the rain. My phone gripped so tight my fingers hurt. The screen shows his latest text about having proof that Jonna targeted him. But I know this is just another way to get me to talk to him. I pull the curtains closed hard enough that the rings scrape against the rod, then go through the apartment turning off every light until I'm standing in complete darkness. My phone keeps lighting up with more messages, but I don't read them. I can't see him anymore, but I know he's still down there in the parking lot, probably staring up at my windows trying to figure out which room I'm in. The apartment feels smaller somehow, like the walls are pushing in on me. I sit on the floor with my back against the couch because I can't make myself go to the bedroom where I might not hear if he tries to come inside. Around midnight, the knocking starts. Not loud pounding that would wake the neighbors, but soft, persistent taps that make my skin crawl worse than if he was beating on the door. His voice comes through, muffled but clear enough that I can hear him saying he just needs 5 minutes to show me the evidence about Jonna. 5 minutes to explain everything. 5 minutes to make me understand. I shove my headphones in and turn on music as loud as I can stand it, but I can still feel the vibration of his knocking through the floor. My hands shake so bad I can barely type out a text to his sister telling her what's happening, that he won't leave, that I'm scared. She responds immediately asking if I want her to call the police. I tell her not yet, but maybe soon. The knocking stops and I pull out one headphone to listen. Silence for maybe 30 seconds. Then his phone rings outside and I hear his voice get louder. His sister must have called him. I can't make out words, but the tone is angry and it's not his anger. She's yelling at him. This goes on for 20 minutes. her voice occasionally cutting through clear enough that I catch words like harassment and pathetic and police. Finally, I hear a car door slam and an engine start. I run to the window and peek through the curtain just enough to see his taillights disappearing down the street. My phone buzzes with a text from his sister saying she told him she'd call the cops herself if he came back tonight and that she's coming over tomorrow to check on me. I text back a thank you, but my fingers are still shaking. I don't sleep at all that night. Every sound makes me jump. A car door somewhere in the complex. Footsteps in the hallway that pass by my door. The building settling and creaking. I check the window every 15 minutes to make sure his car hasn't come back, pulling the curtain back just an inch to scan the parking lot. By the time the sun comes up, I'm exhausted and shaky, and I realize I can't keep living like this. Not with him having a key and his name on the lease giving him legal right to be here. I wait until exactly 9 when the landlord's office opens and call. The landlord Jasper Barker answers on the second ring, and I explain the situation without going into too much detail, just that my ex moved out but won't stop coming by and I need to know my options. He's quiet for a moment, then says he's seen this kind of thing before. He offers to send someone to change the locks this afternoon if I pay for it, then he'll deal with Mark's access rights through the proper legal channels. I agree so fast I almost interrupt him and he says the locksmith will be there around 2. Mark's sister shows up at 10:30 with coffee and a bag of breakfast sandwiches from the place near her work. She takes one look at me still wearing yesterday's clothes. My hair a mess. My eyes red and swollen and pulls me into a tight hug. She says her whole family is disgusted with Mark's behavior, that her mom cried when she heard what he did last night. We sit on the couch and she makes me eat half a sandwich even though I'm not hungry. While we're talking, Mark starts calling her phone. She declines the first call, then the second, then the third. After the 5th call in 10 minutes, she blocks his number completely and shows me the screen to prove it. She stays with me until the locksmith arrives at 2. A middle-aged guy with a toolbox who gets to work immediately without asking questions. Mark's sister insists on paying for it herself, saying it's the least her family can do after what Mark put me through. I try to argue, but she won't hear it. Just hands the locksmith her card when he's done. I feel grateful but also strange accepting help from his family when he's the one who destroyed everything. After she leaves, I test the new lock 3 times to make sure it really works. That evening, Mark comes back. I hear his footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of a key sliding into the lock. It doesn't turn. He tries again, jiggling it harder this time. Nothing. Then my phone starts ringing. I let it go to voicemail. He calls again. Voicemail. Again. I turn the volume down, but I can see the screen lighting up over and over. After the 10th call, I give in and listen to one of the voicemails. He's crying, his voice breaking as he talks about how Jonna admitted she only wanted him back to prove she could, how she never loved him, how he threw away everything real for a lie. I feel nothing but emptiness where my love for him used to be, just a hollow space that doesn't even hurt anymore. The next morning, Mark's grandmother calls. Her voice sounds shaky with age and emotion as she apologizes for her grandson's behavior. She tells me I'll always be her granddaughter no matter what Mark did. That blood doesn't make family. Love does. Then she says something that makes me start crying harder than I have since he left. She's written me into her will because I'm more family than he's proven to be. Her unconditional support means everything when I feel so abandoned by the person who was supposed to love me most. After work, Natasha comes over and finds me on the floor surrounded by wedding planning binders, all the vendor contracts and venue information and menu tastings spread out around me like evidence of a future that doesn't exist anymore. She sits down next to me and gently takes the binders away, then pulls out her phone and starts helping me make calls. Some vendors are understanding about refunds, especially when Natasha explains the situation in her blunt way. Others cite cancellation policies and keep our deposits. Each call adds another layer of pain to everything I've already lost, the financial cost of trusting someone who didn't deserve it. That evening after Natasha leaves, I'm sitting in the dark apartment when I hear his car pull up outside. The engine cuts off and I peek through the curtain to see Mark getting out, looking up at my windows. He doesn't knock this time, just stands there in the parking lot like he's waiting for something. An hour passes and he's still there, leaning against his car with his phone out. I watch him scroll and type, probably sending more messages I'm not reading. Around 11, I can't take it anymore and I dial the police non-emergency line. The woman who answers sounds tired but professional when I explain someone is loitering outside my building and won't leave even though I've asked him to go. She says an officer will come by to check it out. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulls into the lot and Mark straightens up, putting his phone away. The officer gets out and walks over to talk to him, and I can see Mark gesturing up at my window, probably explaining how his name is on the lease. They talk for maybe 5 minutes before the officer points toward the street. Mark gets in his car, but before he drives away, he rolls down his window and shouts up at my building that I'm making a huge mistake, that Jonna played both of us, that I'll regret this. The officer says something sharp to him, and Mark finally leaves. The officer looks up at my window and I step back from the curtain, my heart racing. I call my boss before work the next morning and my voice cracks when I try to explain I need a sick day. She doesn't ask for details, just tells me to take care of myself and not worry about the office. I spend the entire day in bed with the curtains closed, jumping every time I hear a car outside. My chest gets tight and my breathing goes weird whenever footsteps pass in the hallway. I cry for a while, then feel nothing at all, then cry again. The cycle repeats until I'm too exhausted to feel anything. Around 3 in the afternoon, someone knocks on my door and I freeze, thinking it's Mark somehow getting into the building. But then I hear his mother's voice calling my name softly. I open the door and she's standing there with reusable shopping bags full of groceries and a container of homemade soup. She takes one look at me and her face crumples with sympathy. She comes in without asking and starts putting things away in my kitchen, talking gently about how she figured I probably wasn't eating properly. She heats up the soup and sits with me at the table while I pick at it with a spoon, barely tasting anything. She reaches across and takes my hand, telling me she always hoped I'd be her daughter-in-law, that she saw how good I was for Mark, and how happy we made each other. She says she doesn't understand what happened to her son, but she knows I didn't deserve any of this. Something breaks open inside me and I start sobbing, the kind of crying that shakes your whole body. She gets up and pulls me into her arms, holding me while I fall apart, stroking my hair and making soothing sounds like I'm her own child. When I finally calm down enough to breathe normally, she makes me promise to call her if I need anything at all. I finally tell my family what's been happening on Thursday night when my mom calls and asks why I sound so tired. Everything spills out and my brother William says he's driving up for the weekend, that I shouldn't be dealing with this alone. He arrives Friday evening with an overnight bag and immediately starts asking what he can do to help. I tell him I just need company, someone else in the apartment so I don't feel so scared all the time. But Saturday morning he suggests we box up all of Mark's remaining stuff and move it to storage so I don't have to look at his things anymore. I hesitate because it feels like a big step, but William points out that Mark made his choice when he packed his bags the first time. We spend the morning going through the apartment, filling boxes with Mark's books and clothes and random stuff he left behind. William rents a storage unit and we load everything into his truck. Erasing Mark's physical presence from the space feels both sad and freeing at the same time. Sunday morning, someone pounds on the door and William answers it before I can stop him. Mark is standing in the hallway looking wild, his hair messy and his eyes red. He demands to know where his stuff is, and William blocks the doorway with his body, telling Mark calmly that his things are in storage and he needs to stop harassing me. Mark tries to push past him, but William is bigger and doesn't budge, just stands there solid and unmovable. Mark's voice gets louder, saying he needs to talk to me, that I have to understand what Yana did. William tells him if he wants to communicate, he needs to do it through lawyers, not by showing up and making demands. Mark keeps trying to see past William into the apartment, calling my name. William pulls out his phone and says he's calling the police if Mark doesn't leave right now. They stand there staring at each other for a long moment before Mark finally backs up. He doesn't leave quietly, though. Mark shouts that Yana's pregnancy test came back positive, that he's going to be trapped with her forever because of my stubbornness, that this is all my fault for not listening to him. William shuts the door firmly and locks it, then turns to look at me. I'm standing in the middle of the living room and something shifts inside me as I process what Mark just said. He's trying to make me feel guilty for his own choices, like I'm responsible for the mess he made of his life. The grief that's been weighing me down for weeks suddenly transforms into anger, hot and sharp in my chest. I'm mad that he left me for someone else and mad that he expects me to fix it now that it didn't work out. William sees the change in my face and nods like he understands. Monday morning, I call the therapist Natasha recommended, a woman named Lindsay Horn who has an opening on Wednesday afternoon. I know I can't process all of this alone anymore. When I sit down in her office for the first time, the whole story comes pouring out, and I break down describing how Mark became a completely different person during those 3 weeks with Yana. The phone calls, the fighting, the way he flinched when I tried to touch him. Lindsay listens without interrupting, and when I finish, she helps me see something I hadn't wanted to admit. She suggests that maybe Mark always had the capacity for this kind of selfishness, and I just never saw it because our relationship was comfortable, and nothing ever challenged it. The idea makes me feel sick, but also explains so much about how quickly he changed when something shiny and new appeared. Saturday comes around and Mark's grandmother calls to invite me to our regular knitting session like nothing happened. I almost say no, thinking it will be too awkward or painful, but then I get angry again thinking about how Jana and Mark have already taken so much from me. I'm not letting them take this too. When I arrive at her house, there are 2 other women there I've met before, friends of hers who clearly know what happened. They surround me with warmth and kindness, sharing stories about their own heartbreaks and how they survived them. One woman talks about her husband leaving her after 20 years for his secretary. Another about a fiancé who disappeared 2 weeks before their wedding in the 70s. Their stories make me feel less alone, less like I'm the only person this has ever happened to. We knit and drink tea, and I feel something loosen in my chest. During the week, mutual friends start reaching out in that awkward way people do when they've heard something bad happened but aren't sure what to say. Some send careful messages asking if I'm okay. Others just say they're thinking of me. A few actually ask what happened, and I realize Mark must be telling his version to anyone who will listen. I need to tell my side at least once, so I write a group message to our closest mutual friends. I keep it simple and factual. Mark left me for his high school ex 3 weeks before our wedding. It didn't work out with her, and now he's harassing me because I won't take him back. I hit send before I can second-guess myself. The responses come in fast, and they're overwhelmingly supportive. Several people admit Mark contacted them trying to paint me as unreasonable and unforgiving, asking them to convince me to talk to him. 3 friends share screenshots of messages where Mark asked them to tell me he made a mistake. I feel validated knowing other people see through his manipulation attempts, that I'm not crazy for maintaining my boundaries. One friend writes that she always thought Mark took me for granted, and she's proud of me for standing firm. Another says Jana always seemed manipulative back in high school, and he should have known better. The support feels like armor against the guilt Mark keeps trying to make me feel. Tuesday morning, I wake up to a notification on my phone and see Jonna has sent me a direct message on Instagram. My stomach twists before I even open it. The message is long and clearly designed to hurt me. She writes that Mark talks about me constantly, comparing everything she does to how I did things better. She says it's pathetic watching him pine for his safe backup option, and she's getting tired of competing with a memory. She adds that I should feel good knowing I ruined their relationship by being so perfect and boring that Mark can't stop thinking about me. I read it twice, my hands shaking with anger. She's trying to provoke me into responding, into breaking my silence with Mark. I screenshot the entire conversation and send it to Mark's sister without typing a single word back to Yana. Then I block her on every platform I can think of. The satisfaction of not giving her what she wants feels better than any response I could have written. Mark's sister calls me an hour later and she's furious. She tells me she just confronted Mark about his girlfriend harassing me, and he claimed he had no idea Jonna contacted me. She says she doesn't believe him for a second because Jonna's too smart to do something like that without his knowledge or approval. Then she drops the real bomb. Jonna announced on social media yesterday that she's 12 weeks pregnant. Mark's sister did the math, and 12 weeks ago was before Jonna ever reached out to Mark about meeting up. She was already pregnant when she contacted him. The timeline makes it impossible for the baby to be Mark's unless they were together before that coffee meeting. I sit down hard on my couch as this information sinks in. Jonna manipulated Mark from the very beginning, using him as a backup plan when she got pregnant by someone else. She saw our engagement announcement on social media and decided to destroy it just to prove she could, to secure a safety net in case things didn't work out with whoever got her pregnant. I spend the rest of the day processing this revelation. Part of me feels vindicated because it confirms Jonna played Mark like a puppet from the start. But another part of me feels disgusted that Mark destroyed our 3-year relationship for a complete lie. He chose to believe her fairy tale about rediscovering lost love when she was really just shopping for a father figure for another man's baby. I make myself a cup of tea and sit by the window watching cars go by. The twisted mixture of feelings is hard to sort through. I want to feel sorry for Mark because he was clearly manipulated, but I also can't forget that he made every single choice that led him here. He chose to keep meeting Jonna in secret. He chose to pack his bags and leave me. He chose to say I couldn't compete with their history. Jonna's manipulation doesn't erase his responsibility for abandoning our relationship and hurting me so badly I couldn't eat or sleep for weeks. Wednesday afternoon, I have my therapy appointment with Lindsay. I tell her about Jonna's message and the pregnancy timeline and how I'm struggling with conflicting feelings about Mark being a victim while also being the person who victimized me. Lindsay listens carefully and then helps me understand something important. She explains that Mark had agency in every single decision he made. Jonna might have manipulated him, but he's a grown adult who chose to believe her, chose to pursue the relationship, chose to leave me without any real conversation about what he was feeling. She says Jonna's manipulation doesn't erase Mark's responsibility for his own actions and choices. This framework helps me hold both truths at the same time without excusing his behavior. Mark was manipulated and Mark hurt me badly. Both things are true. Jonna is a terrible person, and Mark is responsible for what he did to me. Both things are true. I don't have to choose between seeing him as a victim or seeing him as someone who betrayed me because he's both. Thursday, there's a letter in my mailbox when I get home from work. It's from Mark, and it's 10 pages long, front and back in his messy handwriting. I sit on my couch and read through the whole thing even though I know I probably shouldn't. He writes about Jonna's manipulation in detail, explaining the pregnancy timeline and how he realizes now that she targeted him specifically because she saw our engagement announcement on social media. He describes how she love-bombed him during those first few weeks, making him feel special and desired in ways he hadn't felt in years. He admits she played into his ego and his nostalgia for their teenage relationship. He writes about how she's been cruel to him since he moved in, criticizing everything he does and comparing him unfavorably to the men she dated abroad. But nowhere in the 10 pages does he actually apologize for what he did to me. It's all about him and his pain, and his realization that he made a mistake. There's nothing about how he hurt me or destroyed my trust or left me sobbing in our apartment while his friend loaded boxes. I read the last page and then walk to the kitchen and throw the entire letter in the trash. I'm not interested in his explanations anymore. More letters arrive over the next week. The second one is 8 pages about how Jonna criticizes everything he does, from the way he dresses to the food he eats to the movies he likes. The third one is 6 pages about how she's already planning to move to London for her career and expects him to follow her, to leave his job and his family and his whole life here. The fourth one is just 4 pages of him saying he feels trapped and alone and doesn't know what to do. I read the first 2 and then stop opening them after the third one arrives. I just take each envelope directly from the mailbox to the recycling bin, without breaking the seal. His crisis is not my emotional labor anymore. He made his choices and now he gets to live with the consequences. I'm not his therapist or his mother or his girlfriend. I'm just someone he used to know who he hurt very badly. Saturday night, Natasha picks me up and takes me to a restaurant downtown. She insists I need to do something normal and fun instead of sitting in my apartment thinking about Mark and Jonna. We order drinks and appetizers and she makes me laugh with stories about her terrible dating experiences. While we're waiting for our main courses, I see one of Mark's coworkers walk in with his wife. He spots me and comes over to say hello, clearly uncomfortable. He mentions that Mark has been a mess at work lately, showing up late and distracted, barely meeting his deadlines. He says it awkwardly, like he's not sure if he should be telling me this, but feels like he needs to explain why Mark hasn't been responding to work emails. I thank him for letting me know, and he walks away looking relieved. Natasha raises her eyebrows at me across the table. I realize Mark's life is completely falling apart, but instead of feeling satisfied or vindicated, I just feel tired. Everything still revolves around him, even when I'm trying to have a nice dinner with my best friend. Sunday morning, I start looking at apartments online. I need a fresh start somewhere without memories of Mark in every corner. The financial hit from all the wedding cancellations means I'll need to find a cheaper place than what I'm paying now. I look at studios and one-bedrooms across town, in neighborhoods I've never lived in before. The idea of a space that's entirely mine, where Mark never lived and never will live, feels exciting in a way I didn't expect. I schedule tours for 3 different places over the weekend. The first one is too small and dark. The second one is perfect but above my budget. The third one is a small one-bedroom in an older building across town with big windows and hardwood floors. It's cheaper than my current place, and it feels right the moment I walk in. I fill out an application before I leave, and the landlord says he'll let me know by Tuesday. I drive home feeling lighter than I have in weeks. Monday afternoon, Mark leaves me a voicemail. I see his name on my screen and almost delete it without listening, but something makes me press play. His voice sounds desperate and broken as he begs me not to move. He says he heard through mutual friends that I'm apartment hunting, and it means I'm really giving up on us. He talks about how we can work through this if I just give him another chance. His presumption that we're still an us after everything he did makes me so angry, I actually throw my phone on the couch. We stopped being an us the moment he packed his bags and walked out the door. I pick up my phone and text him for the first time since he left. I write that we stopped being an us the moment he packed his bags and my life choices are no longer his concern. I hit send before I can second-guess myself. His response comes through immediately. Text after text after text flooding my phone. He writes that I'm being cruel and unforgiving. He says everyone makes mistakes and I'm abandoning him when he needs me most. He sends 20 texts in 10 minutes, each one more unhinged than the last. He writes that I never really loved him, or I would forgive him. He says I'm punishing him for being human and making one mistake. He calls me cold and heartless and says I'm just like Jonna in my own way. I screenshot everything methodically, scrolling through each message and capturing it. Then I send the entire collection to Mark's sister and his mother, with a message saying I'm blocking his number now. I block him on my phone, on social media, on every platform we ever use to communicate. The silence that follows feels like I can finally breathe. My phone stops buzzing. The notifications stop coming. I sit in my quiet apartment and feel something like peace settle over me for the first time since this nightmare started. The next morning, I wake up to 17 emails from Mark in my inbox. I open my laptop and create a filter that automatically sends anything from his address straight to archive without me seeing it. The little notification that says the filter is active gives me a sense of control I haven't felt in weeks. I make coffee and actually eat breakfast for the first time in days. Scrambled eggs and toast that I managed to finish without my stomach turning. Mark's sister texts me around noon asking if I'm okay, saying Mark showed up at her house last night crying about how I blocked him everywhere. She tells me Jonna is openly cheating on him now, going out to bars and bringing guys back to their apartment while Mark sits there like a kicked dog. I text back that his consequences aren't my problem anymore, and I'm done being his emotional support system. She sends back a thumbs up and says she's proud of me for setting boundaries. I spend the afternoon cleaning my apartment, scrubbing away the feeling of Mark's presence from every surface. I throw out his toothbrush that he left behind, the razor in the shower, the coffee mug he always used. Each item that goes in the trash feels like taking back another piece of my space. Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number. I almost delete it without reading, but something makes me open it. Jonna's name appears at the top of a long message telling me she's leaving for London next month, and Mark is too pathetic to follow her. She writes that I can have him back if I want her sloppy seconds, then includes details about their relationship that are clearly meant to hurt me, things about their sex life and how Mark cried about me during it. I read the whole thing feeling nothing but disgust at both of them. She ends by saying Mark never got over me, and she was just proving she could take him if she wanted to. I screenshot the message and send it to Mark's sister with a note saying, "This is the last thing I'm sharing about either of them." Then I block Jonna's number without responding, cutting off the last thread connecting me to that whole toxic situation. Mark's sister calls me immediately, and we talk for an hour about how manipulative Jonna has always been, how she's done this kind of thing before with other guys. She says Jonna gets off on breaking up relationships just to prove she can, then loses interest once she wins. I thank her for the validation, but tell her I'm ready to stop talking about Mark and Jonna altogether. She agrees, and we make plans to get coffee later in the week, just the two of us without any mention of her brother. Wednesday morning, I check my email and find a message from Jasper saying my apartment application got approved. I actually scream with excitement, the first real joy I've felt in weeks. I call Natasha immediately and she squeals on the other end of the phone, saying we need to celebrate. That weekend, she and William come over to help me start packing. We order 3 pizzas and play music while sorting through my stuff. I get rid of things that remind me of Mark, keeping only what feels like mine. The coffee maker we bought together goes in the donation box because I never liked it anyway. The throw pillows he picked out get tossed. The framed photos of us come down from the walls and I throw them in the trash without looking at them. Natasha finds the wedding binder I'd been hiding under my bed and holds it up asking if I want to keep it. I shake my head and she dumps it straight in the recycling. William packs up my books and kitchen stuff while making jokes about Mark's terrible taste in everything. We work until midnight, making real progress on clearing out the apartment. By the time they leave, I have 6 boxes packed and 3 bags of donations ready to go. Thursday afternoon, Mark's grandmother calls and asks if I'll come to Thanksgiving dinner with their family. She explains that Mark won't be there because they told him he's not welcome until he gets his life together. I'm touched but unsure if I should go, worried it will be awkward with his parents and extended family. She insists I'm family regardless of Mark's choices, that I've been coming to their house for 3 years and nothing changes that. Her certainty makes me tear up with gratitude. I tell her I need to think about it and she says to take my time, but she's setting a place for me either way. I hang up and sit with the invitation for a while, realizing how much I want to go, but also how scared I am of facing everyone. That night in therapy, I talk to Lindsay about it and she encourages me to go if it feels right, saying chosen family is just as valid as blood family. She points out that Mark's family is choosing me over him right now, which says something important about my worth. I leave the session feeling more confident about accepting the invitation. Thanksgiving morning arrives and I drive to Mark's grandmother's house with a pumpkin pie I baked the night before. My hands shake a little as I ring the doorbell, but Mark's mother opens it with a huge smile and pulls me into a tight hug. Inside the house smells like turkey and stuffing and everything feels warm and familiar. Mark's father shakes my hand and tells me he's glad I came. His sister hugs me and whispers that Mark tried to show up anyway, but their dad turned him away at the door. We sit down to eat and I'm surrounded by people who treat me with love and support. Mark's mother apologizes again for her son's behavior, and I tell her she doesn't need to keep saying sorry for his choices. His sister jokes that they're keeping me in the divorce and everyone laughs. Even Mark's father, who usually stays quiet during family gatherings, tells me I deserved better, and he's ashamed of how his son acted. His words hit me hard, because he's not someone who shares feelings easily. Mark's grandmother squeezes my hand across the table, and I feel tears starting, but I blink them back. During dessert, Mark's sister mentions that Yana left for London last week, and Mark is completely alone now. She says he burned bridges with most of his friends through his behavior over the past few months, always canceling plans to be with Yana or talking about nothing but his relationship drama. I feel a flicker of pity, but mostly relief that this chapter is truly closing. Mark's grandmother squeezes my hand again and says, "Some people have to lose everything to learn anything." The conversation moves on to other topics, and I relax into the warmth of being with people who chose me. We play cards after dinner and I laugh more than I have in months. When I leave that night, Mark's mother hugs me at the door and tells me I'll always have a place at their table. I drive home feeling full in a way that has nothing to do with food. The following weekend, William, Natasha, and Mark's sister all show up to help me move. I'm surprised when his sister arrives with her truck, but she insists on helping, saying she wants to support my fresh start. We load boxes and furniture, making multiple trips across town to my new apartment. The space is smaller, but it's mine, with no memories of Mark or our failed relationship. The walls are white and clean. The floors are old hardwood that creak under my feet. I hang new curtains that I picked out myself, light gray ones that let in plenty of sunshine. We arrange furniture and I put my books on shelves in a different order than before. Natasha helps me set up my bedroom while William and Mark's sister handle the living room. By evening, everything is in place and my new apartment looks like a home. They order Chinese food for dinner and we sit on my floor eating straight from the containers because I haven't unpacked my plates yet. Mark's sister toasts with her soda can to new beginnings, and everyone clinks their drinks together. After they leave, I walk through each room touching the walls, claiming this space is mine. My first night in the new apartment, I sleep better than I have in 2 months. I wake up feeling lighter, like something heavy lifted off my chest during the night. The sunrise comes through different windows, and I actually smile watching the light change across my bedroom wall. I make coffee in my new kitchen, standing at the counter in my pajamas without any memories of Mark doing the same thing. The apartment is quiet in a good way, peaceful instead of lonely. I spend the morning unpacking more boxes and hanging pictures on the walls, only ones that feel like me. No photos of Mark, no reminders of our relationship, just images of places I want to visit and art I picked out myself. By afternoon, my new place feels settled and real. Tuesday evening, I'm making dinner when someone knocks on my door. I look through the peephole and my stomach drops. Mark stands in the hallway looking terrible, thin and exhausted with dark circles under his eyes. His clothes hang loose on his frame like he's lost 20 pounds. He knocks again and starts talking through the door, begging me to let him explain. He says he has nothing left and I'm the only person who ever really knew him. His voice cracks and I hear him crying, but I don't open the door. Instead, I call his sister and she answers immediately. I tell her Mark found my new address somehow and he's outside my apartment. She says she'll be there in 10 minutes and tells me not to engage with him at all. I stand away from the door listening to Mark beg and cry, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. When his sister arrives, I hear her voice in the hallway, furious that he's stalking me. She yells at him about boundaries and restraining orders and how he's making everything worse. Eventually, I hear them leave and the hallway goes quiet. His sister calls me an hour later after she drops Mark off at his apartment. She sounds tired and frustrated as she tells me Mark finally admitted the truth about Yana's baby. Jana confessed before leaving that she got pregnant by a guy in London and used Mark as a convenient American backup plan in case things didn't work out. The timing never added up because she was already 12 weeks pregnant when she contacted Mark about meeting for coffee. She targeted him specifically after seeing our engagement announcement on social media, wanting to prove she could still have him if she wanted. Mark is devastated by the depth of her manipulation. but his sister says he still made his own choices. I listen to all of this and feel nothing except relief that I escaped becoming further mixed up in their toxic situation. The baby that Mark thought might trap him with Yana forever was never his at all. Jana played them both, but Mark chose to believe her lies over trusting what we had built together. His sister apologizes for calling so late, and I tell her it's okay, that I'm grateful she came to remove him. After we hang up, I sit in my quiet apartment feeling the weight of everything that happened, but also feeling free. The next morning, I call Lindsay's office and book an extra session for that week. When I sit down in her familiar office on Wednesday afternoon, she asks how I'm doing, and I tell her about Mark showing up at my new place, about Yana's confession, about feeling relieved but also stuck. She listens quietly while I explain how I keep thinking about what Mark went through with Jana, how she used him, how he must feel knowing the baby was never his. Lindsay stops me there and points out something I haven't noticed. She says I've spent the last 20 minutes talking about Mark's pain and Jana's manipulation instead of my own healing. She asks what I want for my future, rather than what happened in my past. The question catches me off guard because I realize I've been so focused on understanding their story that I forgot to write my own. She challenges me to think about what I want independent of Mark, independent of what happened, just for myself. I sit there struggling to answer because every goal I had was tied to our relationship somehow. Lindsay waits patiently, and eventually I start listing small things. I want to try pottery because I always thought it looked interesting. I want to spend more time with my own family. I want to focus on my career. She smiles and says those are perfect starting points. Walking out of her office, I feel different, like something shifted in how I see everything. That evening, I search for pottery classes nearby and find one that meets Wednesday nights at a community center 15 minutes away. The next session starts in 2 weeks, and I sign up before I can talk myself out of it. 2 weeks later, I walk into the community center feeling nervous about trying something completely new. The pottery studio is bright and smells like wet clay, and the instructor is a woman in her 50s with clay-stained apron and kind eyes. She introduces herself and shows our small group of 6 students the basics of working with clay on the wheel. My first attempts are terrible, the clay wobbling and collapsing under my hands, but she comes over and guides my fingers into the right position. Something about the feel of cool clay spinning under my palms is calming in a way I didn't expect. By the end of the 2-hour class, I've made a lopsided bowl that looks like a kindergartner made it, but I'm proud anyway. The other students are friendly, and we chat while cleaning up, and one woman mentions she started taking classes after her divorce as therapy. I don't share my story, but I nod understanding. Driving home, I feel lighter than I have in months, excited about going back next week. Mark used to say pottery was silly and impractical, that I should focus on hobbies that were useful. I realize how many small interests I gave up because he didn't value them. The next Wednesday, I go back and make a slightly better bowl, and the instructor compliments my improving technique. Creating something beautiful with my hands feels therapeutic in ways therapy itself doesn't reach. On a Friday morning in late November, I open my email at work and see Mark's name in my inbox. My stomach drops, but I force myself to open it instead of deleting it immediately. The email is different from all his previous desperate messages. He writes that he knows he doesn't deserve my forgiveness or even my attention, but he needs to acknowledge what he did wrong. He lists specific things without making excuses. He says leaving me was the most selfish choice he ever made, that he let nostalgia and ego destroy something real. He admits he chose to believe Jana's lies because it felt exciting and validating, and he threw away 3 years of trust and love for a fantasy. He acknowledges that Jana manipulated him, but that he made every choice himself, that being manipulated doesn't erase his responsibility for hurting me. He says he's not asking for anything, not asking me to respond or forgive him, just that he needed me to know he understands what he destroyed. The email ends simply with an apology that doesn't demand anything in return. I read it 3 times looking for the manipulation, the hidden ask, the guilt trip, but it's not there. For the first time since he left, something he wrote feels genuine rather than calculated to get what he wants. I don't respond, but I save the email in a folder labeled Closure, recognizing it as a small step toward the end of this chapter. Thanksgiving approaches, and my mother calls asking if I'm coming home for the holidays. For the past 3 years, I spent every major holiday with Mark's family, fitting my own family visits around his traditions. My mother never complained, but I hear the hope in her voice when she asks. I tell her yes. I'll be there for Thanksgiving and probably Christmas too, and she sounds thrilled. After we hang up, I realize how much I prioritized Mark's family over my own, how I bent my life around his preferences without him ever doing the same for me. I'm reclaiming parts of myself that got lost somewhere in trying to be the perfect partner. When I tell Mark's sister about my plans, she completely understands and says her family will miss me, but they're glad I'm spending time with my own parents. She mentions Mark is apparently planning to spend Thanksgiving alone in his apartment, having burned most of his bridges. I feel sad for him, but not responsible for fixing his loneliness, which Lindsay says is healthy boundary setting. The week before Thanksgiving, I drive to my parents' house with a car full of my pottery pieces to show my mother. She loves them and displays them on her kitchen windowsill where the light makes them glow. The Monday after Thanksgiving, my boss calls me into her office and I feel nervous until I see her smiling. She tells me they're promoting me to senior coordinator with a significant raise, effective immediately. She mentions I've shown real growth and leadership over the past few months, that my project work has been outstanding. I thank her, trying not to cry because the recognition means more than she knows. Walking back to my desk, I feel proud of myself for throwing energy into work as a healthy distraction, rather than falling apart completely. That evening, I call Natasha to share the good news, and she insists we go out to celebrate. Over dinner, she tells me I seem different lately, more confident and settled in myself. I realize she's right, that slowly I'm becoming someone stronger than I was before Mark left. The promotion reminds me I'm capable and valuable outside of any relationship. I use part of my first bigger paycheck to buy better pottery tools and sign up for an additional advanced class on Saturday mornings. Early December brings another call from Mark's grandmother inviting me to Christmas Eve dinner like she does every year. I hesitate because I don't want to make things awkward, but she insists I'm family regardless of what Mark did. She tells me Mark won't be there because they told him he's not welcome until he gets his life together and makes real amends for his behavior. Her matter-of-fact tone makes me smile because she's never been one to coddle anyone. I accept the invitation, realizing this family has become mine independent of Mark, that they chose me just as much as I chose them. She sounds delighted and says she's been working on a special gift for me. Later that week, Lindsay asks how I feel about seeing Mark's family without him there, and I realize I don't feel guilty or awkward anymore. I feel like I'm going home to people who love me. She says that's healthy emotional boundary setting, being able to maintain relationships with people who matter while not feeling responsible for Mark's isolation. He apparently spent Thanksgiving alone, and will spend Christmas alone too, having pushed away most people in his life through his behavior. I feel sad for him but not responsible for him, which is a new feeling. Christmas Eve arrives cold and clear, and I drive to Mark's grandmother's house with presents and my best pottery bowl filled with homemade cookies. The house glows warm with lights and decorations, and Mark's mother answers the door, pulling me into a tight hug. Inside, the whole family is there except Mark, and everyone greets me with genuine warmth. Mark's sister hugs me and whispers that I look happy, that my eyes are brighter than she's seen them in months. We eat dinner around the big table like always, and I realize how much I missed these people, how they became my family over 3 years. After dinner, Mark's mother pulls me aside and hands me a small wrapped box. Inside is a beautiful silver necklace with a delicate pendant, clearly old and valuable. She tells me it belonged to Mark's late aunt who never had children, and she wants me to have it because I'm the daughter she always wanted. Her voice breaks, saying she knows Mark messed everything up, but that doesn't change how she feels about me. The gesture overwhelms me with emotion, and I start crying while she holds me. I realize I didn't just lose Mark. I gained a family who chose me despite everything. Mark's sister finds us and joins the hug, whispering that I'm stuck with them forever now, whether I like it or not. We laugh through tears, and I fasten the necklace around my neck where it catches the light. The rest of the evening is filled with warmth and laughter, and I drive home feeling grateful for people who see my worth even when I struggle to see it myself. Early January brings one final email from Mark with the subject line simply saying goodbye. I open it expecting more desperation, but instead find something different. He writes that he's moving to a different city for a fresh start, that he got a job offer in another state and accepted it. He says he hopes someday I can forgive him even though he doesn't deserve it, that he destroyed the best thing in his life through his own selfishness and cowardice. He acknowledges that Yana used him, but that he chose to let her, that he valued the fantasy of his high school romance over the reality of what we built together. He thanks me for 3 good years and says he's sorry he threw them away for nothing. The email ends with him saying he hopes I find someone who appreciates what he was too stupid to see. I read it twice and then write back a simple response. I type that I hope he finds what he's looking for, and I mean it. Hitting send. I feel the last thread of anger dissolve into indifference. He's just someone I used to know now, someone who made bad choices that hurt both of us. I don't hate him anymore, but I don't love him either. He's just gone, and I'm still here building something better. In my next therapy session, Lindsay asks what I want for myself moving forward, not in relation to Mark or anyone else, just for me. I think about it and realize my answer has changed since she first asked months ago. I tell her I want to focus on building a life I love independent of any romantic relationship. I want to deepen my friendships with people like Natasha who showed up for me. I want to pursue pottery seriously and see where that takes me. I want to advance my career and prove to myself what I'm capable of. I want to learn to trust myself again, to trust my instincts and my worth. Lindsay smiles and says I'm already doing all of that I've been doing it for months without realizing it. She points out that I've rebuilt my entire life from scratch since Mark left, that I've created something authentic and strong. Walking out of her office, I feel proud of myself in a way I haven't in years. I'm not the same person Mark left crying in our apartment, and I'm grateful for that. I've learned I don't need someone to complete me because I was never incomplete, just temporarily lost. February brings a weekend pottery workshop that I sign up for after my instructor mentions it. The workshop runs Saturday and Sunday, 8 hours each day of focused work with an experienced artist teaching advanced techniques. I'm nervous about spending that much time on something I'm still learning, but I show up Saturday morning ready to try. The instructor is patient and talented and pushes us to experiment with forms and glazes we haven't tried before. I spend both days covered in clay, completely absorbed in the work, and by Sunday evening I've created 3 pieces I'm genuinely proud of. The instructor pulls me aside before I leave and tells me I have natural talent, that I should consider taking advanced classes and maybe even selling my work someday. Her words surprise me because I never thought of pottery as anything more than therapy. Driving home with my new pieces carefully wrapped in the passenger seat, I feel excited about something that's entirely mine. Mark never touched this part of my life, never had opinions about my pottery or influenced how I approached it. This is something I discovered and developed completely on my own, and that makes it precious in a way nothing else is right now. A week after the workshop, Natasha comes over with her laptop and a bottle of wine, announcing we're booking a trip. She pulls up beach resort websites and starts scrolling through options for a spring getaway. I realize she's looking at the same dates I would have been on my honeymoon, and instead of the gut punch I expected, I feel something close to excitement. We book a 5-day vacation to a beach town neither of us has visited before, splitting the cost and picking a hotel with an ocean view. Natasha raises her glass and jokes that this is my divorce celebration, even though I never actually married Mark, and I laugh because it feels true. This trip will create new memories in time that was supposed to belong to him, and I'm taking it back for myself. The next morning, I stop at a coffee shop near my apartment for my usual order, and while I'm waiting, one of Mark's old friends walks in. He recognizes me and comes over, asking how I've been in that careful way people do when they know something bad happened. I tell him I'm doing well, and he mentions he talked to Mark recently, that Mark moved to a new city and got a better job and started going to therapy. He says Mark seems to be doing better, getting his life together, and I nod politely while my coffee gets made. I'm genuinely glad Mark is getting help because nobody should stay broken, but I also realize I don't actually need to know any of this. When he asks if I'm still in touch with Mark, I change the subject to ask about his own life, and we chat about his new dog until my order is ready. Walking back to my apartment, I noticed that hearing about Mark didn't hurt at all, didn't make my stomach clench or my chest tighten. He's just someone I used to know who made choices that hurt both of us, and now he's working on himself somewhere else. I've truly moved on. Valentine's Day arrives in mid-February, and instead of spending it alone feeling sorry for myself, I go to a party Natasha throws at her apartment. She calls it a Galentine celebration and invites 6 of her single friends, including me. We eat too much chocolate and drink wine and play ridiculous games that make us laugh until our sides hurt. Someone suggests we go around and share the worst date we've ever been on, and the stories get progressively more outrageous as the wine flows. I realize I'm genuinely happy surrounded by these women who chose to show up for each other, who celebrate friendship instead of mourning absent relationships. This is better than any romantic dinner would have been. When I get home that night, I text Natasha thanking her for including me, for creating space where being single feels like a choice rather than a failure. She responds with heart emojis and says I'm stuck with her forever now. The call comes on a Tuesday morning in late February while I'm getting ready for work. Mark's mother's voice is shaking when she tells me his grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep during the night. I sit down hard on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, as she gives me the funeral details. The grief hits immediately and completely. This woman who became my grandmother when mine died, who called me every week and taught me to knit and wrote me into her will. I cry for an hour before pulling myself together enough to call my boss and explain I need the day off for a funeral. The service is on Thursday at the church where Mark's family has gone for generations. I arrive early and sit near the back, not sure where I belong in this family that's not quite mine anymore. The room fills with people who loved her, and then I see Mark walk in with his mother and sister. He looks terrible, thin and pale with shadows under his eyes, wearing a suit that hangs loose on his frame. Our eyes meet across the room for just a second, and in that moment, I see everything we were, and everything we'll never be again. He's a stranger now. Someone I used to love connected to me only by our shared grief for this woman who was better than both of us. He looks away first, and I turn my attention back to the service. After the funeral, there's a reception at Mark's mother's house, and I almost leave until his sister finds me in the parking lot and insists I come. Inside, people share stories about Mark's grandmother, her kindness and sharp wit, and the way she made everyone feel loved. I add my own story about how she taught me to knit after my grandmother died, how she never made me feel like I was intruding on her weekly tradition. Mark's mother pulls me aside into the kitchen while others are eating, her eyes red from crying. She tells me her mother left me a substantial amount of money in her will, along with all her knitting supplies and patterns. She says her mother talked about me constantly in her final weeks, telling everyone how proud she was of how I'd rebuilt my life after Mark left. The words break something open inside me, and I start crying harder than I did during the actual service, overwhelmed by this final gesture of love from a woman who saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. Mark's mother hugs me tight and says I was the granddaughter her mother always wanted, and that doesn't change just because Mark made stupid choices. I spend the next week processing the inheritance paperwork and picking up boxes of knitting supplies from Mark's mother's house. The amount of money his grandmother left me isn't huge, but it's enough to make a real difference, and I know exactly what I want to do with it. I research advanced pottery classes and find a year-long program that meets twice a week with a master potter who teaches professional techniques. The tuition is steep, but I can afford it now, and I sign up immediately. I also use part of the money to buy proper equipment for a small studio setup in the corner of my apartment, a better wheel and kiln and storage for supplies. Setting up the space feels like building something permanent, investing in a future I'm creating for myself. Knowing Mark's grandmother believed in me enough to fund this gives me confidence I didn't have before. I start the advanced classes in March and quickly realize how much I still have to learn. The instructor is demanding but patient, pushing me to try techniques that feel impossible at first. I spend hours at my wheel practicing, and slowly I start creating pieces I'm genuinely proud of, work that feels like it means something beyond just therapy. Spring arrives in late March, and I look around at my life and barely recognize it from 6 months ago. My pottery is improving every week, I've been promoted twice at work, and my friendships with Natasha and Mark's sister have become some of the most important relationships in my life. I'm thriving in ways I couldn't have imagined when Mark left me crying in our apartment. One Saturday, I'm organizing my closet, and I see the wedding dress still hanging in the back, wrapped in plastic. I pull it out and hold it up. This beautiful, expensive thing that was supposed to represent my future with Mark. Looking at it now, I feel nothing except the sense that it's time to let go of this last physical reminder of what didn't happen. I search online and find a charity that provides wedding gowns to brides who can't afford them, and I call to arrange a donation. The next day, I drive the dress across town to their office and hand it over to a volunteer who thanks me warmly. Driving away, I feel like I just closed a book I finished reading, the story complete even if it didn't end the way I planned. That night, I rearrange my closet, and the empty space where the dress hung becomes room for new clothes that reflect who I'm becoming instead of who I thought I'd be. I sleep peacefully that night without any dreams of Mark for the first time since he left, and I wake up feeling lighter than I have in months. In early April, Natasha mentions she has a coworker who's single and asks if I'd be interested in meeting him for coffee. My first instinct is to say no, but then I realize I'm not actually opposed to the idea anymore. We set up a casual coffee date on a Saturday afternoon at a place near my apartment. He's nice, and we have an easy conversation about books and travel and our jobs, but there's no romantic spark between us. Walking home afterward, I realize that's okay, that I enjoyed the conversation anyway, and I'm ready to eventually date again when the right person comes along. I'm not afraid of trusting someone new because I trust myself now to recognize red flags and maintain boundaries, to walk away if something doesn't feel right. A few days later, Mark's sister calls and mentions almost casually that Mark is dating someone new in his city, a woman he met through his therapy group who knows about his past mistakes. She says they seem to be taking things slowly, that Mark is being more careful this time. I wait for some feeling to hit me, jealousy or anger or even satisfaction, but all I feel is hope that he's learned from what happened between us. I tell his sister I'm glad he's moving forward, and I mean it, because him being happy doesn't take anything away from my own happiness. She's quiet for a moment and then says, I taught their whole family what healthy boundaries look like, that watching me rebuild my life showed them all what self-respect means. Her words stay with me after we hang up. This idea that my healing became a lesson for people I love. I think about how far I've come from the woman who stood crying while Mark packed his bags, and I feel proud of myself in a way that has nothing to do with anyone else's approval. In March, I start working on a large vase during my advanced pottery class, spending 3 weeks on the intricate details that cover its surface in swirling patterns. My instructor stops by my wheel one evening and studies the piece for a long moment before suggesting I enter it in the local spring art show. I'm nervous about showing my work publicly, but I agree because the vase represents something important. This beautiful thing I created from raw material through patience and careful attention. The show opens in early April, and I stand in the gallery surrounded by professional artists' work, feeling like an imposter until I see people stopping to look at my vase. When the judges announce second place in the ceramics category, I'm genuinely shocked, my hands shaking as I accept the ribbon. 3 different people ask if I do commissions, and I give them my contact information while my brain tries to process that pottery might become more than just therapy. Driving home that night, I think about building something meaningful from the darkest period of my life, turning pain into actual transformation instead of just survival. 2 weeks later, Mark's mother invites me and his sister to dinner at her house, the 3 of us eating pasta and drinking wine like we've done monthly since Mark left. His mother mentions casually that Mark reached out asking about me, wanting to know how I'm doing. She told him I'm doing wonderfully, and he should focus on his own healing rather than looking backward. I'm grateful she protected me from another attempt at contact, and his sister squeezes my hand across the table, reminding me this family chose me regardless of what Mark did. Later that night, I stand in my apartment looking around at the pottery pieces on every shelf, the photos with friends covering my walls, the reminders of the life I built from the rubble of my broken engagement. I'm not the same person Mark left crying in our shared apartment 6 months ago, and I'm grateful for that change. I learned I don't need someone to complete me because I was never incomplete in the first place, just temporarily lost in someone else's story, and now I've found my way home to myself.